As a credentialed educator, this is why I have chosen to homeschool. Hello, my name is Shashin. I am one of the co-founders of Little Hands Literacy, and I just want to say welcome to or welcome back to our channel. Today I am going to be talking about why I have chosen to homeschool as a credentialed educator. So I realized after doing this video that I did not go a lot into my background in education. As I mentioned, I am a credentialed educator. I spent over 20 years in the field of education. I am credentialed to teach in the states of California and Georgia. I spent 10 years as a kindergarten teacher. I have taught second grade. I was a reading interventionist, reading specialist, and I also worked as a certified facilitator and coach for a reading company where I was able to support teachers, leadership teams, and entire districts on their reading program. So I've been able to see teaching from many different perspectives across the country, in the classroom, at the leadership level. And so from all of that experience, this is how I came to this conclusion. I thought this would be a really good video to do for those that are thinking about homeschooling, whether you're in your first year or thinking about doing it for next year. And so I know I could really go on and on about this, and I'm going to try very hard not to. So I actually decided to really zero in on 3 reasons why I have chosen to homeschool. There could be more, but I'm going to focus on the 3 today. And so I'm going to start with number 1, and that is the students and the teachers. Before you get triggered, let me explain. So as an educator, I have always invested in my classroom, in my students. I always loved and embraced my students when I was teaching. However, I did notice as a teacher in the classroom after COVID, there was a different energy in the classroom. I think that was for a number of reasons. Some that I observed were, after COVID, a lot of kids coming back had trouble communicating with one another, so they didn't know how to interact socially. They also had a hard time with their self-regulation, emotional regulation. Obviously, with littles, that is to be expected. Most of the time I was teaching, I spent it in the primary grades, K through 2. However, it was just drastically harder when they came back from COVID. And so I spent a lot of time in the classroom just in conflict resolution, supporting the kids with talking through their feelings, how we're supposed to communicate our feelings, communicate our wants and our needs to our friends, to the teacher. And it took up a lot of our time because the kids were just having a real hard time with that. Another thing I noticed is I know that there are some parents that are very intentional about what their children are exposed to. They're very intentional about screen time, and the screen time that they do let them have is monitored, and they want to make sure that it's age appropriate. However, that's not the case in all homes. And so there are some kids that, while their parents may, try and keep tabs on it, they may have older siblings that are exposing them to things that are not necessarily age appropriate. And so as an educator in the classroom, I did see kids sharing information that was not always age appropriate, that I had to, step in and kind of intervene in these conversations. However, I will say as an educator, I wasn't always there. So even though I did see some of these instances, I'm sure it was happening on the playground and at lunch. And, there can't always be a teacher everywhere all the time, just like there can't always be a parent everywhere all the time. And so just not knowing what, your child may be exposed to, our kiddos don't always come home and tell us what they've heard, what, they've seen, all the things. And so that was something that was also a little concerning. And the last thing I'll mention is it also seems that kids are feeling a lot of the stress and overwhelm that we as adults are feeling in society. And a lot of that comes out as anger and frustration in kids. It's affecting their motivation to want to learn, just because they're just trying to process so much. And as much as we try as teachers to be there, when you have a class of 25 kiddos and you've got lessons and things to get through. It's hard to support each child in the way they need to be supported emotionally. If something has happened in the world and they're having a hard time processing, if something has happened in their home and they're having a hard time processing, if something has happened at school and they're having a hard time processing. I always did community circles and morning circles at the beginning of the day. After lunch, we would usually do circles just to have kids have the space to process. And I did try to make time for social emotional learning during the day, but even that, it didn't always seem like it was enough. When I mentioned teachers, so first I just want to say I have worked alongside some amazing educators. I have been in the trenches with some great teachers that are still lifelong friends today that I've been very close with. However, what I have observed is a lot of the teachers that are choosing to leave education right now are those teachers that are passionate, that were invested, that were really trying to make a difference for their kids. And I think a lot of it is just because it is when you're giving so much and there's so much being piled on you, it really takes a toll on your mental health. I have known teachers that, went home on Friday perfectly okay and did not return on Monday because of, health concerns that either drastically affected or even ended their life. And so it's serious for teachers when it comes to how it's impacting them mentally, how it's impacting them physically. And a lot of teachers are choosing to care for themselves. Not only care for themselves, but also be there for their own families. You give so much to your classroom that you don't always have anything left for your own children if you have children in a family at home. And so that's what I was referring to when I said students and families. Students and teachers. And so I've just seen this shift and this change in the energy in the classroom and in the morale of educators. And that was something that concerned me when I was thinking about whether homeschooling was right for me. So the second reason I have chosen to homeschool is because it is important to me that I have a sense of what my children are being taught. And so, some teachers communicate that better than others with the families that they serve. But what I'm speaking to specifically is, what curriculum have they adopted for reading, for math? Is it age appropriate? How are kids learning? Are they getting an opportunity to do hands-on learning, through play even for our primary kiddos and even some of our upper, elementary kids? Another big thing is the electives. I don't even want to call them electives because I feel like they're equally important, but science, history, art, music. So are our kids getting that, even though it may be on the schedule, even though it may be planned, because of some of the things that teachers are dealing with that I mentioned in reason number 1? It's really hard to get to all the things during the day. And a lot of times it's those other subjects, music, art, history, science, that get cut at the end of the day because we've run out of time. I know there are some schools that have specials, and that's great, but even then, when there isn't a lot of time for some of these subjects, you're only getting art that once a week. You might be getting music once a week. You might be getting science once a week. So I really wanted to be intentional about being able to spend more time on these areas of learning, especially depending on the interests of my kids. And then more specifically, history for my children as well. I wanted to ensure I was able to give my children a rich and deep history of who they are as African Americans in our country, all of the contributions, as well as a great history of the continent of Africa and all of the, the rich and deep and ancient history from Africa. And I know that is not often taught. And so that was very important to me to be able to provide that and provide that in a way that was appropriate, age appropriate for my kids, and in a way that they really just wanted to learn, and that was interesting and connected to their interests. And so that was another reason why I have chosen to homeschool. And last but not least, one of the reasons I have chosen to homeschool is because school is not developmentally appropriate. I'm just going to lay it out there. Feel free to comment your thoughts. But the reason why I say that is because just looking at the school day, I know there's some schools where kids have to report as early as 7:15, 7:30, which means depending on how far they are from school, kids are waking up very early. There are schools that go 8 hours, which is a very long time for kids to be in a very structured and restricted environment. The fact that some schools are only getting one 15-minute recess, maybe a 20-minute recess throughout the entire day. That was something that was very hard for me as an educator, especially those years where I had 20 boys and 5 girls. I was like, yeah, we need a morning recess. We need an afternoon recess. My kids needed to go out, get fresh air, run, feel the sun on their face. Like, this is a part of childhood. And unfortunately, that's not the case all the time. Another thing is the very rigid schedules that sometimes teachers are expected to follow. I know in my experience, I've worked under some great leadership teams that have given more flexibility when it comes to schedules, but I know that there are other schools that are very strict about the schedule. And so even if you've gotten into, let's say, a science lesson and the kids are just really excited and they're asking all these questions, if you are only allowed to do science from 1 to 1:30, and then at 1:30 you're supposed to do something else, and there's a chance that someone could be coming in, that they're monitoring your schedule, you could have a walkthrough, they're going to expect to see what you have on your schedule. They're going to want to see you teaching what you said you'd be teaching at that time. So you don't have the freedom to, if kids get really immersed in a lesson and they're really interested, to take your time, to enjoy that, to feed their curiosity and their interests. That's what learning should be. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't have that freedom, and it kind of stunts that spark that kids have when they connect with something of interest. And then that also goes, like I said, with the school schedule, starting really early sometimes in the morning and ending in the late afternoon, just going all day, especially for kindergarten. Having a full day kinder with no nap just seems... I was a kindergarten teacher for 10 years. Some of those babies needed a nap, first. Second, I feel like I would have been able to do, if I could have been intentional with like just half a day, because that's what their attention span allowed for. And in that half a day, even having outdoor recess, okay? But it just, a full day of a 5-year-old, sometimes kids are even 4 when they enter in, it was not developmentally appropriate. I believe it really does at times begin to spike stress hormones in our kiddos, especially at the end of the day. You can kind of see it when they just start going haywire right before dismissal because they're burnt, they're done. And so I really wanted to be able to create a schedule and a flow that was child appropriate for my kiddos. So that means, you know, really having our flows. If there's something that we're learning and that curiosity spark is ignited, to be able to spend more time there, to be very intentional. Now, I will say this is my area of growth. It is very important to get outside every day with kids. Being a California girl and being used to a certain weather, and now living in Georgia, the winter weather sometimes is like, woo! But I am still working on ensuring that I am and we get out every day, but I want it to be that intentional, unstructured, just outdoor exploration. So that is so important for kids. And so that was something that I was really looking forward to instilling and being able to do. And so those are some of the reasons why I have chosen to homeschool. I really just, and being passionate about learning and teaching and education, I get really excited when I'm able to be in that flow state, when I'm able to just plan a lesson and not feel like there's a time restriction, or I can only use a certain curriculum, or there are certain strategies that I have to use, or certain strategies they don't really want to see. Like, I just want to be able, almost like an artist, I just want to be able to create. And I know that in that space, my children will be able to authentically learn and enjoy as well. And so those are some of the reasons why I've chosen to homeschool. This video has gone a little longer than I was anticipating, but I wanted to just get on and kind of share that. If you are new here, or even if you've been here before, I'd love to hear what has motivated you, or even if you're thinking about homeschooling, what has prompted you to begin to even ponder and explore. If you're a new homeschooler, what got you into the space? What encouraged you? So I'd love to hear that if you want to drop it in the comments. But I just want to thank you so much for giving me some of your time today, and I look forward to you joining us for our next video.